No, I will wait and look for the opening lines to see on the screen. And I mute myself.
My daughter just come out of the screen and that and take a community greeting, sit down there. I might come up if something's going wrong with the TV screen. All right. You got a minute still, maybe?
You want me to wait a minute? I've got 10:01 or 2.
Oh, yeah. I watch it like.
This is off 2 minutes. Yeah, okay. All right. Sure. Can I read this? Yes. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to our service from the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence. I'm David Mix Barrington. I'm a member of the worship committee and the choir. If you are new or returning after a time away, we're glad to see you. Please feel free to fill out a blue welcome card. Someone can hold a welcome card up in the air. One here. You can put this welcome card in the offering plate later in the service. There is a link to an online version in the chat. We'll put you on our email list so you can receive information about all that we do. We strive to be a congregation that welcomes people of all ages, races, religious beliefs, backgrounds, sexual orientations, gender identities, and abilities. We belong to the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, and we are guided and inspired by its values and principles. Our values and principles move us to remember that those of us in the Pioneer Valley live on the unceded homeland of the Pocumtuck, Nonotuck, and Western Nipmuc peoples. We acknowledge our responsibility to confront the legacies of dispossession and systemic racism that are part of our collective history, and we affirm and celebrate the many legacies that inspire us. We have drawing materials and other ways to occupy hands on the tables in back. Restrooms are downstairs and can be reached through one of these doors. You can either take the stairs or an elevator and return the same way. After the service, the Climate Action Group will be showing the documentary Kiss the Ground right here in the Great Hall. Young adults are having an event at the David Ruggles Center at 1 p.m. to learn about UU and abolitionist history. Lastly today, there is an Earth Day outing at Mount Tom, and there are 2 other announcements on the order of meeting. On Tuesday, there is a community dinner in the social room at 5:30, and at 7 o'clock on Wednesday on Zoom, there is a gathering for the UU the Vote. We are here to celebrate, to reflect, and support one another. We'll welcome our guest speaker today. Matt Meyer, he, him, is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist with a long background as a musician and worship leader for UU congregations. Matt lives in Boston but travels as an itinerant worship leader, bringing the good news of Unitarian Universalism to hundreds of congregations all over the country. He also serves as Director of Operations for Sanctuary Boston, a contemporary UU worship community with rockin' music and engaging worship that meets on Wednesday evenings online and in person. And we're here to celebrate, to reflect, and to support one another. It is good to be together, and now we'll begin our service.
Tide is rising, and so are we. tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The land is holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. 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 Our opening words this morning come to us from Mary Oliver, an excerpt of her poem At the River Clarion. I don't know who God is exactly, but I'll tell you this. I was sitting in the river named Clarion on a water-splashed stone, and all afternoon I listened to the voices of the river talking. Whenever the water struck a stone, it had something to say, and the water itself and even the mosses trailing under the water. And slowly, very slowly, it became clear to me what they were saying. Said the river, I am a part of holiness. And I too, said the stone, and I too, whispered the moss beneath the water. I'd been to the river before, a few times. Don't blame the river that nothing happened quickly. You don't hear such voices in an hour or a day. You don't hear them at all if selfhood has stuffed your ears. And it's difficult to hear anything anyway through all the traffic, the ambition.
And now please rise if you are willing and able for our chalice lighting. Words are on the screen. We light this chalice as a beacon of hope, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning. We light our chalice as a beacon of love in celebration of the life we share together. Yeah, that's fine.
Well, I don't know if our opening hymn this morning was written inspired by that Mary Oliver poem, but it certainly speaks to it. The words are printed in your order of service. Will you repeat after me? Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Let's try that. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen again. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. The next part. 'Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Let's try that. 'Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Again, 'cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. So for all of our singing this morning, I invite you to do it in whatever way your spirit needs. If the words elude you and you just want to hum along, that's okay. That's just as good. And if what you need this morning is to just sit in silence and soak in the sound of the room and other people singing, that's okay too. That's just as good. And if what you need this morning is to rock out like you're alone in the car with your radio, this is your morning to do it. What you need to do is try out some new harmonies. I encourage you to do so. Let's start out with some rhythm. Here we go. Right on your chest. You can just feel that right in your body. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says. Now we're going to keep singing, but I want to encourage you not only to try out some new harmonies as we get into it, as we learn this song, but also the rhythm of this is a little tricky in some places. I'm just going to admit it. I went to college for studying rhythm, but I imagine that's not true for everybody here, maybe just some of us. And so if we start the phrase or finish it at some different times, that's okay. That's just like the harmony of singing different notes at the same time. We can start and end at different times, and that's okay too. That's a kind of rhythmic harmony, so don't be shy about it. The important thing is to sing out. Here we go. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says. Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you put your roots down. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says. Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across bones. A little faster. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says. Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stone is the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says. Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across the bones. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body moves across your bones. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Take a deep breath. You may be seated as you exhale. Today's service is about listening to the earth, listening to what we can learn from the earth, and particularly listening and paying attention to the rivers and waterways where we build our homes, our towns, our civilizations, and what we can learn from the rivers where we make our homes. And it's also a service about imagining new futures, to look back at our history, but also know that change is possible, to imagine new possibilities and not always accept the world as we find them, and to use whatever tools, whatever resources we have available to us to make the world a better place, to live in harmony with the earth and with each other. So I'd love to share this story with you all, a story called Miriam and the Tambourine. Now, Miriam was just about to begin the 4th grade. And she was thrilled because 4th grade was the year at her school that all of the students got to learn to play an instrument and play in the school orchestra. Did any of you ever play in the school orchestra? A whole bunch of us, a whole bunch of band nerds in the house. I love that. Well, Miriam was so excited that on the first day, she showed up extra early, and she walked into the orchestra room and looked around at all of the instruments, wondering which one she would get to play. There was a giant bass drum. There were shiny brass trumpets, beautiful violins. She saw her teacher, Ms. Berman, there, and she asked her, "What instrument do you need me to play in the orchestra?" Ms. Berman looked at her and said, "Miriam, right? I think I've got just the instrument for you." And she came out a moment later with a tambourine. "A tambourine?" Miriam asked. "But is that even an instrument?" "Well, of course," said Ms. Berman. "Every great orchestra needs a great tambourine player, and you are our tambourine player." Well, Miriam took the tambourine, but for the whole rehearsal all day long, she had to play the same rhythm over and over and over. It went like this. It went dot, 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 dot. Can you all try that? And when she came back to school the next day, on Tuesday, it was the same rhythm for the whole rehearsal all day long. It went. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the whole rest of the week, it was that same rhythm over and over and over. It went. And you might guess that Miriam was not any more excited about the tambourine at the end of the week than she had been at the beginning. And so when she went to church with her family that Sunday, she was feeling pretty sad about it. And her teacher, her Sunday school teacher, noticed that she was looking down. Mahesh, he noticed it and he asked her about it. She said, "Well, I was so excited to learn to play an instrument and to play in the school orchestra, but I ended up with a tambourine and I just play the same rhythm all week long. It goes." "The tambourine," Mahesh said. He said, "Did you know that where my family is from, in southern India, we call the tambourine a kanjira?" Can you say kanjira? He said, "The kanjira is a very complex instrument, and people spend their whole lives learning to master it. And in fact, one of the beautiful things about the kanjira is every note you can play on the kanjira, you can also sing. And so that's how they teach students to sing out the rhythms of the kanjira. Takitatum, kutadengi, natuntum, tatum, takitatum." People put together the sounds and the rhythms to create poetry. In fact, they create whole books of poetry of the rhythms of the kanjira. Where I come from, the tambourine is an instrument for creating poetry and, well, creating beauty in the world. Poetry and beauty, Miriam said. Can you all say poetry and beauty? Well, that doesn't sound so bad. After church, all the adults were running around at coffee hour, but Miriam was sitting by herself, and a family friend, Anna, saw her. And Anna remembered. She sat down with her and she said, "This was the week you were going to start 4th grade and learn to play an instrument and play in the school orchestra. How is it going?" "Well," she said, "I ended up with the tambourine and I just play the same rhythm all week long. It goes." "The tambourine," Anna said. She said, "Did you know that where my family comes from in Brazil, we call the tambourine a pandeiro?" Can you say pandeiro? People have been playing the pandeiro for generations in Brazil. And in fact, she said, when my ancestors were brought to Brazil as enslaved people, they would play the pandeiro as a way of making music and singing and coming together to be together in community, even when times were so difficult. And in fact, they would even use the music of the pandeiro to secretly practice martial arts so they could protect themselves against the people that held them as slaves there. Where I come from, the tambourine is an instrument for creating community and even safety. Safety and community, Miriam said. Can you say safety and community? Well, that doesn't sound so bad. So Miriam was thinking about all of this when she went back to school the next day. She saw her teacher, Miss Berman, there, and she told her about the kanjira and the panderu, about poetry and beauty and safety and community. But she said, I don't know what any of that has to do with me, though. I'm still playing the same rhythm all week long, and it goes. Well, Miss Berman asked. She said, Miriam, do you know where your name comes from? She said, of course I do. It comes from my parents. Well, that's right, she said, but do you know who Miriam was? She said, in your family's history, there's a story of the ancient Israelites fleeing slavery in Egypt and making their way to a promised land of freedom, a land of liberation. And as they just escaped the Egyptian army, they had a wonderful celebration to celebrate that they weren't there yet, but they were on their way to a better place. They were on their way to freedom. And they had this wonderful celebration, a sacred celebration of song and dance. And it was a woman named Miriam, one of the first named musicians in history, who began that celebration by getting her tambourine out. And women, just like Miriam in ancient Israel and well, all over the Middle East, would play the tambourine for weddings and festivals and celebrations. Whenever people gathered to celebrate, there was a tambourine there and a song. In your family's history, the tambourine was a way of celebrating the journey towards love and towards freedom. Freedom and love, said Miriam. Can you say freedom and love? Well, that sounds pretty good. So over the years, Miriam tried out some of the other instruments in the orchestra. She played the bass drum a little bit, and she took some violin lessons, and she played the trumpet for a few years. But she always remembered the story of the tambourine, how all around the world and all throughout history, people had taken even the most basic of instruments, the simplest of tools they had in their hands, and they found ways to use them to shape their community around them, to create poetry and beauty in the world, to foster safety and community, and to celebrate the journey we're all trying to make towards love and freedom. Today is Passover Eve, and tomorrow our Jewish siblings in faith will be telling the story of Miriam, singing and celebrating that journey we're all trying to make towards liberation, that journey towards freedom that we are struggling to make together. I think what we do here on Sunday morning is come together not just to remind each other of the values that are most important to us, but to think together and sometimes even challenge each other to take whatever tools we have available in our hands and use them to make the world a better place. Use them to shape our communities and make the world more beautiful and more safe, and celebrate the journey we're making towards love and towards freedom. May it be so, and may we make it so together.
So it's time for our greeting. Please wave to the people up on Zoom, and may walk around and greet.
Hi, Zoom participants. Say hello. Hello. Hello, Julie. Hi, Claire.
Good morning.
Hi, Mary Beth and Jane and Georgia and Guile. There you go. Hi, Sally Weiss. And a couple of people who are mute, who don't have their picture, Paula and Wally. Hi, how are you? Good morning, everyone. Okay. And Mimi, I see Mimi just showed up. Hi. Nice to see you, Mimi. And what? Usually Janet does that. Mm-hmm. Who knows what our new minister will do? I know. Okay. We'll have to see. It might be different, right? Yeah, could very well be different. Okay, what comes next? I've got queued up here. The offering. Okay.
It's time already for another story.
Do that.
I went to college for a degree in hand drumming, of all things. And for years, I played in 2 different Brazilian samba bands, which is one of my favorite styles of music. The nice thing about a 20-person drum ensemble is that people only hire you when they really want to party. And so it was always a good gig playing for festivals and celebrations and parades. And one of the reasons that I love Brazilian music so much is that there are so many different cultures, different groups of people living together in Brazil. And over the years, they've shared their many, many different ideas about music. So that today, Brazilian music sounds unlike any other music in any other part of the world. And I'd love to tell you the story of just 2 of these groups of people. 2 of the biggest groups in Brazil, 2 of the main cultures, are the Portuguese from Europe. So can you all on this side say Portuguese from Europe? Great. One of the other main cultures, the main influences in the music, are the Yoruba from Africa. Can you say Yoruba from Africa? Now, these 2 groups of people have lived together in Brazil for a very long time. But when they first came to Brazil, they listened to and they played totally different kinds of music. The Portuguese from Europe, of course, liked European music best. And in Europe, people were, and still are, mostly interested in the part of music that's all about how different notes sound when you play them together in groups or one right after another. How the different notes sound together is called harmony. And they were so interested in harmony that in Europe they named each note so that when you were teaching music to a student, you could know what the purpose of every note was just by its name. So I'm going to teach you all a song that sounds a little bit like what the Portuguese might have sung when they first came to Brazil. It starts out like this. Do, sol, fa, mi. Try that. Do, sol, fa, mi. And then do, sol, fa, mi, re. Do, sol, fa, mi, re. And then do, sol, fa, mi, re, sol, do. Do, sol, fa, mi, re, sol, do. Again. Do, sol, fa, mi, re, sol, do. Perfect. Now that song, I wrote it to sound like the most basic structure of a lot of European music. Because like a lot of European music, it starts out on the tonic, it goes up to the dominant 5, finishes the major triad on the 3rd, and then it has a subdominant 4 before 2-5-1 cadence, which is fairly standard, of course. But maybe we'll cover that in a different service. The Yoruba listened to and played very different kinds of music when they first came to Brazil. The Yoruba were from West Africa, and in West Africa they were much more interested in the part of music that's all about when you play the notes. How are the notes grouped together or spaced out? And when you play the notes is, of course, called rhythm. So I'm going to teach you a song that goes like this. Da-dum, da-dum, dum, 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 da-dum, da-dum, dum, 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 da-dum, da-dum, dum, dum, dum. Da-dum, da-dum. Great, you got it. But in West Africa, they were interested not just in how music sounded in their ears or how they thought about it in their brains, but how they felt music in their bodies. How music was a physical experience and how it brought people to be together, physically be together, to take care of each other or celebrate or mourn when they needed it. So we're going to add our bodies just a little bit and go like this. Da-dum, da-dum, dum, dum, dum. Da-dum, da-dum, dum, dum, dum. Da-dum, da-dum, dum. One more. Da-dum, da-dum. Perfect, you've got it. So we have these 2 groups of people living together in Brazil, each with their own unique style of music, and that would have been fine, except that there was a problem. And the problem was that the Portuguese, who had all of the land and all of the money and all of the power, they didn't really think that the Yoruba song was any good. And in fact, they didn't think anything the Yoruba ever did was any good. And because they had the land and the money and the power, sometimes they would say, Yoruba, you can't play your music. Can you all say that to them?
You can't play your music.
But the Yoruba knew how important music was to how they told stories to their children and celebrated and mourned. And so they said, we are going to play our music anyway. Can you say that to them? Much more convincing over here. Over the years, the Portuguese tried to get them to stop playing their music. They took their drums away and they smashed them. They put them in jail for making music. They yelled at them. They were mean to them. But in spite of all of those things, the Yoruba kept on playing. And they were so persistent for so long that eventually some things began to change. Eventually, there were some Portuguese that began to listen to the Yoruba song. Do any of you think that the Yoruba has a pretty good song too? Some of you? Yeah, a bunch. Okay, great. And at the same time, there are some Yoruba listening to the Portuguese and listening to their song. Any of you think their song is an okay song too? Not as many, huh? Okay. That's fair. That's how it happened. Over the years, there were a few people in each group that even though no one around them wanted them to listen to those that were different from them or work with those that were different from them, a few radicals went against the grain. And some of these radicals happened to be musicians. And they thought, well, what if we worked together? What if we took some of your ideas and some of our ideas? What if we took some of your instruments but played them in new ways? What if we took your harmony and our rhythm? What if we put them together? What would it sound like? What would that sound like? How can we imagine it? Portuguese, do you still remember your song? No, sort of, okay. That's right, it was like 300 years ago in the story, so it's okay if it's gotten a little fuzzy. Your song goes like this, here we go. Do, sol, fa, mi, re, sol, do. Do, sol, fa, mi, re, sol, do. Keep going. Do, sol, fa, mi, re, sol, do. Yoruba. Do-dum, do-dum, dum, 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 do-dum, do-dum, do. Do, sol, fa, mi, re, sol, do. A little louder. Do, sol, fa, mi, re, sol, do. Do, sol, fa, mi, re, sol. One more time. Do, sol, fa, mi, re, sol, do. Beautiful. That's how the Portuguese and Yoruba came together to create a new style of music called samba that was unlike anyone in the world had ever heard before. That's why I love Brazilian music so much. And it's also a little bit of the lesson we have for this morning, that when we cross the borders and the barriers that divide us, when we reach out beyond those divisions, we can work together and we can create change. We can change the world around us in ways that we could never do just on our own, because it takes all of us to change everything. So thank you for helping me with the story. This instrument is called a tantan from Brazil. It's not actually a garbage can. It's an instrument that costs quite a bit of money. With its help, I'd love to sing this next song together, a song celebrating the rivers where we make our homes, where we build our towns and our civilizations. The chorus goes like this. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. Can we try that? Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. Again. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. One more. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. The river is a healer, the river is a sage. The river knows no end and the river feels no age. The river is a leader every single day. It's living in the moment and it always finds a way. Water, water, heal my body, water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the like the river gathers rain. Water, heal my body. Water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. Water, heal my body. Water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. The river is a traveler, always on the go. A river never worries if it's fast or if it's slow. River, take me to where I need to go. I will just relax and let that river flow. Water, heal my body. Water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water, would you rise in body or spirit? Water, heal my body. Water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water, I feel a little louder. Water, heal my body. Water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water, I feel whole. One more time. Water, heal my body. Water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water, I feel whole. When I go down to the water, by the water, I feel whole. Let's take a deep breath. You may be seated as you exhale.
And Janet Clark has a social justice minute.
Hello. I won't be singing. I'm a member of the Climate Action Group, and this is the Social Justice Minute, which recognizes that our faith calls us powerfully to action on social justice and the environment. Speaking at the Unitarian Church in Greenfield, All Souls, a few weeks ago, Professor Mumma, eminent authority on forests and climate change, said, "Save the forests to draw down carbon levels polluting the atmosphere." He did qualify this to be ecologically sound forests, which gives pause. What is a healthy forest? The terrestrial ecosystem, forests, grasslands, swamps, and farms, holds massive amounts of carbon, some 80% of which is in organic soil. But carbon calculations do not include a value of the life that sustains healthy forests and grasslands. Living creatures and fungi keep system balance with gentle energy and material exchanges, powering the detailed and complex cycling flows that support a healthy ecosystem. Biodiversity is crucial and is sustained by eggs, spores, and seeds in manure and compost, fed biologically rich and non-GMO feed. By regenerating the world's soils to former health and depth, we can completely and rapidly stabilize Earth's climate, restore ecosystems, and create abundant food supplies. Our Climate Action Group offers a clear and engaging movie to illustrate these principles called Kiss the Ground. And there's nothing quite so amazing and beautiful as film footage of destroyed soils being brought back to life via regenerative agricultural practices that include application of compost, biosolids, and other recycled organics. Using compelling footage, graphics, and visuals, along with NASA and NOAA footage, the film illustrates how soil is the missing piece of the climate puzzle because of its ability to draw carbon from the atmosphere. Join us after service in this very room, 11:30. It's just 45 minutes long.
Our generosity makes everything we do possible, and it helps us support organizations and movements in the greater community. Half of the proceeds of each week's offering support the Society's operating budget, and half are shared outside our walls. You can mail in a check, donate online, or put your contribution in one of the plates that the ushers will pass. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Repeat after me. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Well done. Let's take a deep breath together. Take a moment to feel the rhythm of your breathing and allow it to slow. Take a moment to feel the rhythm of your heartbeat and allow it to ease. Breathe deep and feel your feet on the ground, on this solid earth beneath us. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground, and listen. Take a moment to be present in this place where, for now at least, there is nowhere else you need to be. Breathe deep and be present in this time where, for now at least, there is nothing else you need to do. Let's take a moment of shared silence to practice our listening with our roots down in the ground, to practice stillness. Water, heal my body. Water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. Join me. Water, heal my body. Water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. One more time. Water, heal my body. Water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. Amen. Blessed be. In this spirit of making a home by hand, building our home by the rivers, we offer the wisdom of architects with this abbreviated list of 250 things an architect should know, written by Michael Sorkin, a professor of architecture at City College of New York.
Flowering season for azaleas.
How to lay bricks.
Hydrology is definite.
The color wheel.
What the client wants. What the client thinks it wants. What the client needs. What the client can afford. What the planet can afford.
The quality of light passing through ice. The meaninglessness of borders. The reasons for their tenacity.
The smell of concrete after rain. The angle of the sun at the equinox. The depth of the aquifer beneath you.
The fire code, the seismic code, the health code.
How to listen closely. Who profits?
What to refuse to do, even for money.
A bit of chemistry and physics.
What makes you happy?
The acoustical properties of trees and shrubs. The acoustic performance of Boston Symphony Hall.
I just love that one so much. The distance at which you can recognize faces.
Your neighbors.
The capacity of wetlands to attenuate storm surges.
The depths of desire.
And the heights of folly. Our next song is number 1007 in your supplement. Are the words up there? Maybe they're also in the book. They're also not hard to learn if you just want to listen. I'll sing verse 1 through, and then I invite you to join me. Please rise in body or spirit. 1007 is the number, I think. And I'll note that this song was written by a woman named Fea Ora Rose Toure. I believe she changed her name since this book was published. And she is not only a songwriter, but also a playwright and also a poet. And she also founded 12 organizations for racial justice and civil rights. And in addition to all of that, I don't know, I guess maybe in her free time, her day job was as the first Black woman judge in Alabama. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. Again, a river. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul, flowing in my heart. and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river running my soul. Take a deep breath. You may be seated as you exhale. I've made my home by 3 different rivers over the years. As a child, my extended family spent time every summer at a little house in Minnesota on the St. Croix River, the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin. We've always called this little cabin of wood and stone the lake house. And the river is wide there, but it's definitely not a lake. I remember that I was a teenager. I had been hearing this for 13 or 14 years before this discrepancy finally occurred to me. And I remember turning to my mom one day with the self-righteousness that only a 14-year-old can offer, or at least that I was particularly skilled at the time, saying, "You know this is a river, right? Why don't we call it the river house?" And my mom, much to my surprise, explained that the geologists tell us that it had been a lake just a very long time ago, thousands of years ago. Learning of the ancient lake beneath the St. Croix River, I felt like my mind grew 3 sizes that day. The world was older than I had known. It was bigger than I had known. And it was certainly more malleable than I had ever imagined. The architects tell us that hydrology is destiny. Hydrology is history also. My great-grandfather had built that home, and for a child like me, it felt like an impossibly old cabin that may as well have been there since ancient times when the river was a lake. But in fact, there was a time when my great-grandfather had only imagined this home before he hired a bunch of his children and brothers' children and rest of his family to carry the rocks up from the beach and lay the mortar and build the house one stone at a time. There was a time when gathering around the fires on the beach and family dinners around the kitchen table was only in his imagination. The first lesson of rivers, particularly the waterways where we make our homes and neighborhoods and civilizations, is that they are constant and they are constantly changing, both history and destiny. Water, heal my body, water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. I grew up by the city of Chicago, and the city of Chicago grew up at the intersection of Lake Michigan and the Chicago River. In the late 1800s, though, when the city was being transformed by the Industrial Revolution, the Chicago River became so thoroughly polluted that during the Great Chicago Fire, the river itself caught fire. Not a good sign. The awful waters of the river flowed into Lake Michigan, which was the source for the city's drinking water. This pollution, this problem became so bad that before long, Chicago became known as Typhoid Fever City. Not a good reputation. And so the city embarked on this huge project to address this increasingly dire situation. Now I live in Boston, home of the Big Dig, but in Chicago in the early 1900s, they called this project the Big Ditch. They dug a canal, a massive canal that reversed the flow of the entire Chicago River. And our river has run backwards ever since. For 130 years now, the Chicago River has flowed from Lake Michigan rather than feeding it. And the plan worked. It made for a much cleaner city and much healthier people. Growing up near the Chicago River, though, I never knew how different it had once been. Of course, I knew that the tall buildings of the beautiful Chicago skyline had been made by human hands. But those same hands, the labor of architects and engineers and thousands of everyday construction workers, shaped the water as well. The river had shaped the city, and then the city in turn shaped the river. Now you may be wondering, though, as I did, what exactly happened to all of the waste in the river once it was suddenly, overnight, headed in the other direction? Well, you probably won't be surprised to learn that all of the farmers and other neighborhoods downstream, all of a sudden downstream, weren't too happy about it. The farmers of Illinois took the city of Chicago to court to sue them, and then the city of St. Louis sued Chicago, and then the state of Michigan sued Chicago as they saw the Lake Michigan being emptied out in the other direction. Each one of them took Chicago to court, one after another after another. How perfectly American this plan turned out to be, to deal with waste by sending it downstream to somebody else. The poet Wendell Berry is a farmer who has a special way with words, and he once summed up the great religious traditions of the world in his own environmental way, saying, "Do unto those downstream, as you would have those upstream do unto you." The wisdom of architects tells us that borders are meaningless, and the wisdom of the rivers confirms it. Rivers are conclusive evidence of the meaninglessness of borders. So is pollution, so are viruses, for that matter. Anyone with a 6th grade science education who's learned the basics of the water cycle knows this truth, that we all live upstream from each other, and we all live downstream from each other. It turns out that sending sewage west instead of east is no magic. It is not transfiguration. It is only delay. It is only sickness afar instead of sickness near. The second lesson of rivers, friends, is that we are inevitably and intricately bound up together, all downstream, all of us upstream. Water, heal my body. Water, heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. When I left the region of the backwards Chicago River, I came to Boston for school, and I moved into a dorm room in a neighborhood called the Back Bay. It has the word bay in it for a reason. Large parts of Boston are landfill and were once underwater. And the Back Bay, where I lived as a student, was created with some particular dedication to this cause. Trains arrived in the Back Bay dumping 3,500 railroad cars of gravel into the bay every day for 50 years to create the solid ground on which my dorm room was built. Not only is the idea of a city a relatively recent invention in human history, in this case, most of the land of the city is also the result of human hands and human ideas. The city of Boston, like the city here in Northampton, is made up. The laws and the policies and the police, the boundaries and the borders, the zoning and transit and parks and shorelines were all imagined by people, and they were made by human hands. The good and the bad of it. None of it was natural, and none of it was inevitable. All that means that whatever world we've inherited can be made anew and transformed again for the next generation. The third lesson of rivers is that we shape our surroundings as surely as we are shaped by them. We can tend to the waters of the river. We can renew the soils of our land. We can take care of the earth and we can take care of each other, even if that's not the world we inherited. And just as the rivers change us, we can imagine new possibilities for our cities and our civilizations, and we can make them real by the work of our hands. These are the 3 stories of my 3 homes: along a river that flows over a lake, near the river that flows backwards, and above a river of gravel. The rivers and the waterways remind us that change is inevitable and that we shape our surroundings as surely as we are shaped by them. So let's imagine something beautiful, dear ones, and let's send it downstream to our neighbors. Let's imagine more equity and justice. Let's imagine a world rooted in the interdependence that is the truth of our existence. And let's make that world by our ideas and by our hands. Let's imagine a world where borders are a place to invite the newcomer rather than divide people and segregate wealth. Let's imagine cities and civilizations that thrive along the waterways that bind us. Beloveds, do unto those downstream as you would have those upstream do unto you. Our closing song is "The Tide is Rising" by Shoshana Friedman, a friend of mine who lives in my neighborhood in Boston. We've sung it together while getting arrested protesting the fossil fuel industry. It's a great place to sing this song, but so is here together, renewing each other's courage and inspiration. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. It goes like this. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. Let's try that. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The land is holy, the land is holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. Holy, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The task is mighty, the task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The storm is raging, the storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called. The sun is shining, the sun is shining, and so are we. The sun is shining, and so are we. The sun is shining, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The tide is rising, the tide is rising, and so are we. The tide Beloveds, may we imagine a world rooted in the truth of our interdependence. May we make it real and send it on downstream to our neighbors. May we imagine more justice and equity and compassion and make it by hand. May we create cities and civilizations that thrive along the waterways that bind us. And may we go loving this earth and loving each other. Go in peace and go and be blessed as you are each a blessing to others. Amen.